Hello and welcome back to another news video looking at more interview roundups from, this time, Famitsu and Dengeki. It is the lead up to a major patch and indeed a fan festival in Europe in October, and 6.5 releases early October. We should get a release date on that this Sunday during the next live letter. But on the Reddit, I found this post by Blackmore Knight, who summarized a lot of the new information and information that we didn't look at in yesterday's 4Gamer interview, so let's go through just this. Links in the description for both the Famitsu and Dengeki interviews, and of course for Blackmore Knight's summary post with translation, so we don't have to struggle through that, so all credit to them. So this is kind of out of context, just points of interest. Apparently there are more things planned for the gap between patch 6.55, which is scheduled for January next year, and 7.0 than what they covered in the North American Fan Fest. They want to talk more about this in the European Fan Fest, and they apparently need to spread out the announcements and things, since there are 3 Fan Fests again now in real life. This is sort of like a post-COVID situation, and now the FanFests are back. They like to separate all of those announcements into 3 things during the years. So yeah, it makes sense. I'm really excited to see what they have planned leading up to Dawn Trail's release next summer. And bear in mind, before now, they have said at Square Enix that the 10th anniversary since A Realm Reborn, all of the things from that have not been announced. I don't know of any of this. I don't have any insider information myself, but usually when they say they've got other things cooking in the background, you can expect to hear more about that stuff at the FanFest, I would imagine, and probably at the Japanese FanFest as well. So I'm very excited personally. Jumping the gun a little bit to completely different storyline related things, Zero as a character was originally planned from the start of Endwalker's expansion, but this was left as a patch-only thing. This was one of the first main characters developed simply just through patch content alone. Different writers write different patch scenarios though, so they needed some oversight from Oda and Ishikawa to keep things consistent. Very interesting actually to have that as the first only sort of patch character. Interesting. Zeramus will be more of a physical fight instead of a brain training fight. Those are the quotation marks they've used. Note, these are machine learning translation terms that came up when the time about talking about 14 interviews. Oh. The closest thing is that brain training means puzzle-y. Oh, right, so less to sort of figure out and more brute force mechanics to avoid and things. Okay, Yoshi P did have to ask them to amp it up during production, though. So maybe this one, maybe Zeramus is a little bit on the light side. We'll have to wait and see. I don't really know if that's a good judge of the difficulty of something. Personally, I don't think that is the judge at all. Next up, apparently they've changed up their pre-production process for fights since 6.0. Now section leaders just do a preliminary check where they give feedback about the fight concepts and mechanic ideas, and then a final check once everything is done to make sure it all works and that the numbers are good. In the past, leaders were a lot more hands-on with iterative feedback, which was a huge workload from Yoshi P in particular. So they have changed the way that the process of working on this content sort of happens in the background, and I think that means probably a quicker turnover. And as he says, I mean, Yoshi P says, a lot less stress, you know, a lot less on his own shoulders and other people as well. And considering the man himself is, you know, responsible for multiple games now and services, then it's not really surprising. But I personally think the quality has stayed the same. I don't know. What do you think? Next up, his Zeramus extreme feedback was that it was a bit too honest and to amp it up a little bit. That's an interesting comment. It was a little too honest, so a little bit too simple. Maybe can we dilute that into the word simple from honest? I'm not sure. Maybe just too simple to understand, too honest. I don't know what you would get from that. Azura will be implemented as a trial in-game sometime after Japanese FanFest. So the Azura trial, if you didn't know, at FanFest North America, you could fight against Azura or Azura, which was this sort of like goddess type creature character. Not much information has been sort of leaked from that, and I don't think there is too much to talk about there, but it is a trial that you can play. So in theory, I should be able to play that at the European Fan Festival in October, and I'll let you know what it's like. Yojimbo, back in 2019 FanFest, was seen as too hard for a FanFest trial due to the situation where you're put in there with a control scheme, UI, strangers, unfamiliar job. So they reevaluated what their goals were for Azura and felt that the completion rate was where they wanted it to be this time. That is true. I don't think necessarily Yojimbo was really that difficult, but it was certainly more amped up than the fight that we eventually got as part of the Hildebrand thing. Was a lot simpler. But it was quite difficult when you were placed in front of, I don't know, I think I had to play a samurai, and I'm like, I don't know how to play a samurai. And with a bunch of strangers and, you know, people playing healers and didn't know how to heal, and tanks who didn't ever touch a tank before. So, yeah, I suppose it was a little bit, as part of the fun, really, though. But apparently it was a higher completion rate, which to me would say that the trial is probably very easy then. Considering the usual limitations. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll give it a good play test myself at the FanFest. The last Alliance raid might be stronger than usual this time. Yeah, in the 4Gamer interview that we did a video on yesterday, they talked about this in that interview, where essentially they wanted the last part to be sort of ramped up a bit, give you that sense of accomplishment, which is great to hear. Both the scenario writer and battle team for Myths of the Realm were made up mostly of younger and newer people, yeah. This is something else we heard about, that newer people to Square Enix came up with the whole premise behind that. And Yoshi P in the 4Gamer interview mentioned how they wanted to get a fresh perspective from a younger mindset in terms of story writing and the development of it. So it's good. It's really good. They have adjusted the rewards of Alliance Raid Roulette to be consistent with how much time you'd spend in a given instance to make up for the eye-level cheese removal. Interesting, yeah. So if you didn't know about this, people are deliberately taking off gear to queue into Alliance Raid Roulette simply to get Circus Tower or Labyrinth of the Ancients, basically one of the first few Alliance Raids, because they're the simplest, right? And Circus Tower is one of the easiest to do blindfolded. Basically, there are very little mechanics inside there that pose a threat. Labyrinth, not so much, but Circus Tower is definitely the one that people try to cheese into. That's being removed. The item level synchronization is when you queue in, it's just synchronized to the actual instance rather than to your character in particular, right? Or it works something like that. Basically, it's not going to be possible to item level cheese it anymore. And as a result of that, because they know people want the path of least resistance, they'll be increasing the rewards for the roulette. So I presume that means EXP and maybe some tomes. I'm guessing at this point, I don't know. Yoshi P and some development staff did feel bad at times for changing and removing mechanics for trust support, but felt that it was important both in terms of maintainability and playability into the future, as well as giving a better onboarding process should 4 new players all match into the same dungeon. Yeah, this comes after criticism that the new trust-related dungeons have simplified mechanics within a lot of the older dungeons, especially when they've gone through Stormblood as well, to simplify mechanics so that AI, sort of a trust AI, would be able to do the mechanics, because it's a little bit more complex than some of the earlier things in, say, A Realm Reborn. And it has been criticized as dumbing the game down. I've heard some people talk about this, even though it's 4-player content, and that's never really been the focus anyway for difficulty, at least to my knowledge. Especially story-related content that these trust NPCs go through. Regardless of that, they've supported this fact that it's all about maintainability and playability into the future. So, I mean, it's just the story ones at the moment. I don't think they have any plans, or at least I've not heard of any plans for extra content beyond the story-related ones. And with, obviously, 6.5, that means that Stormblood in its entirety, in the entire game, the storyline should be playable through the perspective, at least in the 4-player instances, with Trust AI now. And I think that's where they're settling for a while, at least for the time being. Trust implementation, they say, and management was very hard and usually took a skilled veteran on a development team to do. Yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of considerations on mechanics. No concrete plans on making old 8-man content doable with truss. It's easier to do truss for 4-player content, so some of those fights might have been made 4-man if it ever happens. But Yoshi feels strongly about having the final boss trials always be 8-man. No firm decisions here yet. Yeah, in 4Gamer they reiterated this as well, and a bunch of other interviews recently, how they could remake them as 4-player trials and put the truss in there, but I think it's more of a lean towards the 8-man epic sort of feel of those encounters that they want to maintain. Their data says a huge number of people have engaged with variant mode dungeons in their own way. And the 6.51 Criterion dungeon will receive an increase in rewards compared to the past 2. They will consider feedback on this before determining the 7.x Criterion rewards going forward, and there will be a title for clearing all 3 Criterion dungeons from the 6.x series, but they're considering how else they could reward that to see if they can get it in time. Interesting. So beyond just a title, what other rewards are we talking about? Exclusive mounts? Ooh, let's see what we get. 6.55's relic step will be tomes again. Yeah, this was reiterated in the previous discussion yesterday when we looked at the 4Gamer interview as well. It seems that that's a common response. Next point, they settled on tomes due to looking at data how many weapons were being made by players in past relic content. Yoshi acknowledges, though, however, some of these people who say that this reinforcement method is sloppy, so it's difficult. Some players may dislike doing elaborate things like old weapon enhancement content, while others may feel that the enhancement methods like this one are not enough. I think this is probably not compatible, end quote. So yeah, they talked about this in other interviews as well, as we saw yesterday as well with that video. But essentially, the approach to the relic weapons is we're doing tomes simply because of new players and also the new sort of perspective that people play the game as more than one job at a time. A lot of people interchange, and that was the reason given in the other interviews as well, where it's a completely different mindset in today's culture with approaching that content, and people, apparently like the faster completion of multiple weapons rather than just a grind for one, which I suppose some people will agree with. I don't know. Personally, I miss the sort of Bostia and, Eureka style content personally, but that's my own personal opinion. But yeah, we talked about this before. So the Mandeville relics have the highest completion rate of any relic so far. Well, that's because they're the easiest. The more elaborate they make the relic and content grind, the fewer people make one. Yeah, but that's... No, it's not the fewer people, it's the less weapons are made, but okay. I think there's some statistics that are just not making it home there. There is an inherent conflict between people that enjoy weapon enhancement as content and people that want a system that makes it easier to obtain weapons. Satisfying both is very hard. Okay, I have a solution for this, just totally out of this. Get a tome weapon. Just get a tome weapon. The comparability of statistics on those weapons was pretty close this time around, to the point where you could go either way. Basically, either get your tome weapon, which really wasn't that difficult to obtain, or get your relic. I don't see a lot of the people that complain about this aren't the people that will be making the most out of the statistics anyway. Is that a fair assumption? I don't know. Maybe you think differently. I'm not sure. But I think they're in a tough part where they can't really decide either way, so they're just going for the simple option. But, well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what 7.x has. They will take any feedback into account for 7.x's relic series. So there you go. Give feedback. My feedback personally is, you don't have to make it like Zodiac weapon difficulty, 120 hours to complete a weapon. That's what they gave as an average. But you don't have to make it Hildebrand easy either. I think a happy medium has been sort of succeeded in the game before. I think the resistance weapons were a perfect example of not too easy, but not really that hard either. But kind of like a mix of that and the Heavensward relics, maybe. That's my opinion, though. Maybe you differ, but I like the medium of the two choices rather than two extremes, personally. Moving on then, the Crafter and Gatherer relic final steps, so the Splendorous tools, will be difficult, but not required for any 6.x crafts. You see, that's good. That's perfect. I can't wait to see what those look like. I haven't got any of the Splendorous tools myself, but I have seen my girlfriend's family and a few other people that play the game that I'm friends with who are showing off their weapons, their hammers and the like. And I'm like, ooh, those look nice, but I've got too much to do regardless of the Splendorous tools on top of that. PvP iteration will continue into 7.x, including Crystalline Conflict, Frontlines and Rival Wings. Very nice. Island Sanctuary will get small updates in the 7.0 series, but there are no plans for that to continue through 7.x. Oh, they have other lifestyle content in mind instead. If feedback is different, they might reconsider. Oh, so in 7.0, small updates, but throughout the entirety of the next expansion, they're going elsewhere? No, I quite liked Island Sanctuary. Maybe you think differently. Maybe you, I don't know. I've kind of got shoes on both different feet, really. I want to go in one direction and another. I like the idea of other lifestyle content because it's like new and I want to see what it is. Now they've mentioned it, but I'm not sure I'm willing to sacrifice Island Sanctuary. Don't know. If feedback is different, why not both? Is that a feedback that they would allow? Probably not. They'd be like, no, you can choose one. Our budget doesn't cover both, Meoni, but I want both. That's a bit sad, actually, on one foot. But on the other, like I say, I'm very excited to see what this lifestyle content is. The Allied Beast Tribe Cat Boy will show up again. Oh. Allied Beast Tribe Cat Boy will show up again. I don't know what that bullet point is, but cool. Awesome. Getting Phil on stage was not easy. Oh, talking about Xbox and Microsoft. But Yoshi P really wanted it since Phil was one of Microsoft's biggest advocates for getting 14 on the platform. Yeah, I'm sure he was. The Fall Guys collab will be limited time, periodic content, and not a permanent fixture. That is another nail for me in this news content in the coffin, really. I really hoped that the Fall Guys stuff was going to stick around, that we were going to just have like an addition to the Gold Saucer. But now that I know that it's periodic content and not permanent, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I like it when they leave stuff in and like it's just there, like the Rathalos crossover trial. I think that's fantastic, and it's so nice to just have that as an option to do. But I'm not sure how I feel about that. There's a lot of FOMO that goes with a lot of those events, and I prefer it if it's just in the game for people to do when they choose. But that's going to bring a lot of people to be like, periodic content, eh? So are they going to do like episodic outfits and things, like different things depending on different seasons? I don't really want to go down that route personally of like battle passes and things. Again, they're not talking about that, but limited time collabs are never that enjoyable in an MMORPG, in my opinion. I prefer them if they're like fixtures, but there we go. Anyway, a little bit of extra information that we didn't have before. I'm a little bit sad about the Island Sanctuary going away, but I am curious to see what they put in the next, in its place. Lifestyle content. Wonder what that will be. I mean, we've already had ocean fishing as a piece of that budget. What else could there be? Maybe, I don't know, dating content? Take your favorite scion to a beach somewhere? No, I don't know. I know that's what people would request. Whether or not we'd get that, though. Wasn't there supposed to originally be like a dating minigame or something? I remember somebody talking about that a long time ago. Anyway, let me know what lifestyle content you would like to see in the future. I'm sure there'll be plenty of interesting responses to that. And also what you think about Island Sanctuary going away. Well, not going away, but not getting any big content updates throughout the next expansion. And of course, the limited time events as well. Oh well. Anyway, link in the description. Thank you to Blackmore Knight for doing basically my work for me with this translation summary of all of the points. I went through both of the Famitsu and Dengeki interviews. Those are also linked in the description. They're fantastic interviews as usual, but it was nice to see someone had picked out all of the important bits. And after reading through them with my bad translation through Google, it did make sense to just read those points. Anyway, much love. Let me know what you think. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.